Okay, good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. I want to convene the meeting of the solid waste management subgroup that I've had the privilege of chairing over the last few months. This is the Gasification, Landfill, Gas Recovery Alternatives to Technology subgroup. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time out of your day to join us. I know everyone's time is precious, so I don't see any of my other co-chairs on the Zoom call with us. So we're just going to go right to the presentation from Republic Services, and I will hand it off to Mark, who will make an introduction, and then we can go into the presentation when you're prepared. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Pat's going to bring up the presentation. So Pat, can you do that real quick? And so while he's doing that, I'll introduce myself. Mark Watson, I work for Republic Services. I'm a senior manager of post collection based out of our Indianapolis area office. Been with the company, yes, I'm just starting my 17th year, so not a rookie anymore. I've held a variety of different positions in the company and look forward to talking a little bit about landfills and the circular economy today. Patrick Guerreri.
It looks like he's been taken off. It looks like I just let somebody in with the unique name. He might have stepped out of the meeting. Nope. Yeah, I see a PXGKA61. That might be Patrick back on.
That's going to be Pat. Yeah. Well, if Pat's having an issue, I think I have the presentation here.
I'm sorry, I got kicked off and I'm back now. I can, I don't know what I missed, but I'm assuming I can start the presentation now.
Yep. Pat, I brought it up. So can you guys see the presentation now?
No. Let me give it a shot.
Mm-hmm. There we go. I just think you need to go up a few slides, Pat. And then just hit the presentation mode down. Yeah.
Okay, can everybody see?
Yeah, I can.
I apologize for not being good at Zoom meetings. We typically run our presentations through Teams, but hopefully we can get through this in a reasonable amount of time. It'll be worth everybody's wait. So, but good morning. My name is Pat Guerreri, and I'm the area senior manager of Republic Services Manufacturing and Environmental Services Group. And I would like to thank the task force for providing our company the opportunity to present to this board today. We understand and appreciate the process that the board is undertaking to develop a long-term solution for managing their waste and disposal needs. And we are committed as a company to support this board in any way possible that is needed. Our presentation today will provide the board information regarding modern landfills, the technology used for managing these landfills, and how sophisticated the actual engineering is of these facilities. These are not the landfills of old. We're very proud of the landfills that we have in our organization. We know that they are a safe, viable, sustainable option for long-term disposal. With regards to the entire presentation, one of the things that we've been made aware of is that the board is looking to solve their problems long term, And with our experiences with regards to large, complicated, long-term processes for solving these waste needs, we believe that a multi-system solution is usually the best way to approach the problem. We have situations within our organization where we operate in many cities in which not all the options are available that are available to others for disposing of their waste. And again, one of the things that we found to be very helpful or useful with regards to solving those problems is to use a multi-pronged approach to solving that issue. The good news here is that you have time to consider all of your options. Right now, you have availability within the free market to be able to dispose of the waste that you're generating here. So you have time to walk through this process and determine what is best for the state and this board. I would like now to introduce the other folks on the call with regards to who's going to help with this presentation today. One, unfortunately, is not here, and he's probably our most important presenter. Not to take anything away from you, Mark, but you can introduce yourself to the group.
Yeah, I did, Pat, while we were waiting. And if you want to forward to the next slide, to 3 real quick. So
sure.
So again, Mark Watson, Senior Manager, Post Collections, and Steve White, if he's able to join us, is the president of Steve H. White and Associates. Of note, though, Steve used to run the Ohio EPA. So we thought an expert from that standpoint would be good to have on the call. Clearly understands the rules and regulations and has been at the forefront of regulating landfills and other things as part of being the EPA in Ohio.
Yes, and Steve actually worked for BFI and Allied Waste, and he has a long-standing understanding and history with the solid waste industry, both the public and private sectors. Unfortunately, he can't get on today because he's having some technical difficulties, but Mark and I will do our level best to present the information that he had set aside for this meeting today. And briefly, again, my name is Pat Guerreri, and I've spent my entire career with Republic Services. I've worked for the company for 31 years, and I've worked generally in the greater Northeast area, but as far west as Ohio, Indiana, West Virginia, and as far south as Virginia. So I've had pretty extensive experiences with working in this general geography. Okay, our presentation today will begin with a brief company overview of Republic, and then we would like to discuss the current environment of waste acceptance and availability as far as capacity is concerned in the state of Ohio. Then we will discuss the specific engineering technology we utilize at our modern landfills, including landfill, gas to energy. And then finally, I would like to discuss some basic details about our carbon limestone landfill. It is a very large landfill that is located in Ohio, and currently we accept a significant amount of volume from the East Coast and certainly a significant amount of volume from the state of Connecticut. Okay, I know this slide is a bit busy, but we're very proud of our organization. Again, I've said I've worked here for 31 years, and Republic Services is an outstanding place to work, and I'm very proud to say that I'm an employee of this organization. But with regards to the company in and of itself, we are a large company. We're actually the second largest company in the United States that handles our core services for recycling, collection, and disposal. Last year, revenue was around $11 billion. We have roughly 13 million customers and about almost 40,000 employees. Nationally, we operate 239 transfer stations and 77 landfills that have the gas and renewable energy projects that are either functioning now or will be functioning very shortly. We have 198 active landfills, and within that number of landfills, 8 of those landfills are actually in the state of Ohio. We as a company, we're nationally recognized as an industry leader. Mark was kind enough to add the information at the bottom of the slide. Again, we're very proud of working for this organization. You can see across the bottom here that People Magazine, we're companies that care. Some of the other ones are Fortune, World's Most Admired Companies, and Great Place to Work. These are all national awards that our company has received. And again, we're very proud of the company that we work for. With regards to our long-term sustainability goals, we set some lofty goals for ourselves as an organization. And, we are truly an environmental services company. Our company, a lot of people think of a solid waste organization as someone who has a collection trucks and landfills, and really we are advocates for maintaining a great environment. And you can see here by these sustainability goals that we've set for ourselves. They're very lofty. The first is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 35%. The second that is on the slide is to increase recovery and circularity of our key materials. That's all about our recycling. We want to do more recycling so that we can send less volumes into the landfills. And then finally, which is very important and most interesting to people, is that we want to increase our beneficial reuse of biogas by 50%. One of the things that landfills are known for, especially now with all the new technology, they do generate gas, and that gas is able to be cleaned and put back into the system to allow for either creating energy or creating natural gas. Mark will, as part of his presentation today, he will touch on some of the details regarding the specifics with regards to engineering and how that process works and how many people we're actually able to support as a result of that. At the bottom of this slide, you'll see that for the 7th consecutive year, Republic Services has been named to the Dow Jones Sustainability North American Index. Again, very proud to be part of this index. This is a prestigious recognition, and this is one that we've had consistently for 7 years. And again, we're very proud to say that we are being recognized in the industry as an industry leader in sustainability. Okay, next part of the presentation, we wanted to talk about the circumstances in Ohio. I want to give Steve as much time as possible to join the call, but I don't know if he's going to or not. So, Mark, if it's okay with you, what I'd like to do is go to the latter part of this presentation and see what we can do about presenting our landfill portion of the presentation. Does that work for you?
Let's do it.
I will go ahead and start there. The floor is yours.
That'd be a good segue, because Pat kind of talked about Republic and our commitment to the circular economy. And I kind of stepped through this slide a little bit, but disposal, whether that's landfills or it's incineration, is and is going to continue to be a vital part of that process, right? But other key elements are like reuse, and that's probably the best, right? When you take something that's collected and it's not highly modified and it's able to be reused. And I'll give you a really cool example that Republic does is in Las Vegas. And I imagine many of you may have been to Las Vegas and maybe went to one of those buffet dinners that they have there and go, what happens to all this food waste after people don't eat it, right? So unique solution we have is we collect all that waste from all those casinos, and it goes to our landfill, where we have a facility that kind of pre-treats it by virtue of cooking the material. And then we have a partnership with a hog farm, which is on property, where all that material then goes to feed the hogs. So they're living high on the hog, literally, getting to eat all that food byproduct from those casinos. But it's a great use, right? It's a reuse of material, and there's many other examples. That's really a great solution. Recycling, I think everyone's kind of familiar with that. It's a huge focus for our company and other companies out there. And I know in those, a lot of numbers on that slide Pat just looked at. I mean, we recycle 10 billion pounds a year today with expectations. You can see that 40% growth target by 2030. So we continue to invest in recycling. There's some great technologies out there. There's, some great processing centers that Republic has. There's some great processing centers that other people have. They're just getting more efficient, doing a better job of capturing the material and then getting it to places where it can be reused. Another example there is Republic Services developing a string of polymer centers where we're taking plastics, and then these are separate facilities where we consolidate these plastics and we refine them down to the next level. So that material now can be better used in, for reuse and in a circular way, not just products that can only be reused once, but that material then can go to products that can be go through the process again and again and again, right? So that's the ultimate objective. Then I'll talk a little bit more in a couple slides just about landfill gas and how we're recycling that. And really the last, if you go back, Pat, just one slide there. And really just a couple more, go back, thank you. And just the last area is organics. Organics are really developing differently in different parts of the country based on the interests of folks. If you go out to the West Coast, anaerobic digestion, we've got partnerships there where there's, some pretty aggressive and successful organics recycling. But we see this as a continuing thing that will continue to grow for not only Republic, but just overall. As you guys kind of look at your options, my guess is you might be looking at what those are with organics as well. So, kind of the takeaway here, we're going to talk more about disposal side of it here at landfills, but we're probably very much aligned with you guys that it takes all these different things to really successfully manage waste and take advantage of technologies as they become available and integrate them into the process. So Pat, if you could move ahead. Okay, so now we're going to get down to a little nitty gritty on landfills. There are definitely a lot of misconceptions of folks about what a landfill is and how it's constructed. I have a vivid early memory going to a dump, and this was a dump with my father when I was 5 or 6 years old, and going to what was a big hole, lots of cars and trucks and everything, and people just throwing stuff in. This was back in the 60s before all these regulations came into place. That is not what we do today. Today's landfill is much different. It's safe, it's environmentally friendly, and there's many different things that ensure that's the case. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how they're constructed. So hopefully maybe if you don't know much about them, know a little bit more and have a much greater comfort with what we do at landfills. I'm going to start at the bottom, right? So one of the questions that I get often when we start talking about landfills, how do you make sure that the waste stays in the landfill? And it's really through redundant layers of protection. So when we first build a landfill or build a new part of a landfill, it usually involves excavation or digging down below, the surface of the land. And that varies by site and the geology of the site. Some sites you go lower, some sites are actually just built up from the ground. It depends again on the geology below. And then there's a system of layers that help protect to make sure trash and liquids don't exit the landfill. And it starts with the subgrade, and then it goes to a minimum 3-foot compacted clay layer. This impervious clay, again, is to make sure if liquids hit it, for example, it won't go any further. It's going to stay on top of the clay. But above that is a minimum 60 mil HTP or HDPE geomembrane, or think of it as plastic. And these huge plastic sheets are laid down within the cell on top of the clay. And I want to point out every layer of this goes through a QCI process where a third party comes in and tests to make sure it meets the regulated standards. And then the state also signs off and reviews that. So we put this plastic geomembrane, and these are big sheets that are welded. And again, those welds are all tested. Every weld has to be tested to make sure that it's watertight, right? Again, those get certified as such. And then on top of that, it's a very important thing. I'll talk more about that in a second, is a drainage layer. And the objective is to get all the liquids that come into the landfill, either in the waste that comes in itself or through any rain that may, migrate through the landfill, to capture that all at the bottom. So we have a drainage layer, and it's regulated. It has to meet certain standards, and it is tested. And then on top of that, we have a protective layer. And this is a layer to make sure that there's a space in between the refuse when it starts coming in. And this also allows for additional drainage to get to that drainage layer. And so then we start to place the refuse on top of that. So, everyone should feel comfortable that we have all these layers of protection to ensure that liquids or trash will not get beyond the bottom of the landfill. As even an additional protection, we generally have groundwater monitoring wells at those sites. So these are farther away in this graphic. If you look to either the right or the left, kind of shows a visual graphic there, that are tested, and to say, look, if we ever would, by chance, get a contaminant, then we could look into it, see if it matches the fingerprint of what would come out of the landfill. Again, not common. And then the same thing with gas. I'm going to talk more about gas in just a second, with monitoring probes outside the actual landfill itself. Okay, so the other key things that I really want to talk about here are liquids management and gas. So liquids management is really in two forms in today's landfill. One is stormwater, which isn't different than what I think most of you guys are familiar with, right? Rain comes down, you want to capture that. So we use that through a lot of engineering to make sure that stormwater flows where it's supposed to flow. That's usually into a stormwater retention pond system. Most landfills have multiple storm ponds, and again, they are engineered so that water would flow to those ponds, and then those ponds can be monitored before they're discharged into any other type of water area. So they're tested. But again, that's for water, rain, precipitation, whatever, that has not touched trash. If any water touches trash, it's considered leachate. So we call that leachate. So that's handled completely different, and it's regulated completely different. 100% of that water, not just our sites, but all of our today's landfills, right, is not disposed of like some people believe. I mean, there's not a pipe going into a creek or a river or any of that kind of stuff. It all has to, by regulation, be treated. And that is usually done at a POTW, a public works plant, or a wastewater treatment plant, if you will. And so that's collected from the bottom of the land through the drainage layer as the water migrates through the landfill, or in some cases through our extraction well system, where we also have pumps there and we can capture liquid. So, and again, there's lots of regulations around that. For example, on the bottom of your landfill, you can't have more than a foot of liquids. So you have to continue to move that. You can't let it fill up like a bathtub. That's against regulation, and all those, everything is recorded. Wells are checked on a daily basis, and you've got to meet those requirements, or you could be in a violation. So the water then, as I mentioned, generally goes to, or leachate goes to a pre-treatment, or goes to a treatment plant, usually public works. That usually happens in two manners. It could be on a tanker truck, where we store it in a large tank or a series of tanks at the landfill, and then it just gets trucked. And we have a lot of our sites that actually have direct connections right to the POTW or the wastewater treatment plant. So it's really a good system. The last thing I really want to focus in on here is gas wells. And so as trash decomposes in the landfill, it creates methane gas. I think probably most people are somewhat familiar with that. But if not, that's through the digestion process. As it decomps, it creates this gas, and that's from the organic materials that we take into landfill. So, food waste and anything that's organic. So as that creates gas, right, you need to capture that gas so it doesn't migrate out of the landfill. So we have a very elaborate system of gas extraction wells that are continually being added as the landfill is being built to capture that gas. And so we put the well in there and it used vacuum. So basically, pulls like your vacuum cleaner would in the surrounding area to capture gas and then get, to capture that so that it can be, in many cases, beneficially reused. I'm going to talk about that on the next slide. So very, very important component. The big part of what we do, if we're going into a new area, we have, a period of time where before the material starts to break down, we don't have wells, but we actually, as a company, and I think most companies get pretty aggressive on that in adding wells. And then actually most of the wells we have are actually redrills where we have existing wells and over time they lose efficiency. We put new wells in again to capture this gas that's generated through the process of decomposition. And then as a final step at the landfill, when we get done filling a particular area, again, there's all approved levels of height and width of what we can do. When we reach that level of an area, we put on a final cover system. So much like what I talked about with the bottom, we do with the top, with the exception we put generally a vegetative state or vegetative cover. It's usually grass on top of it to make it look good, and also gives again some runoff. But what this does is it prevents future infiltration of water. So long term we don't need to manage that. Liquids also accelerate gas production as they get entered into the landfill. So it reduces that, and then it just keeps everything in the landfill because there's that same HTP geosynthetic that's welded. So it's basically an enclosed capsule at that point. So and then the last step of a landfill after it's all full is a minimum of 30 years of ownership that our company has. And I say a minimum because it can be longer, and many times it could be. We're just getting to that point with these modern landfills today, where we continue to remove leachate, monitor the wells, invest in it, maintain the exterior appearance. And, and as we go through that, we've got old landfills that, that are closed today that have become parks. We've got landfills that have baseball diamonds on them. So there's also a life after that life for many of our landfills today. So with that, Pat, why don't we just move on one step here, and I'll talk a little bit about the benefit of the gas.
Oh, perfect, Mark. I did want to bring up one point. Steve was able to join the call. So I just wanted to let you know that after you're done with your presentation, we'll kick it over to him.
Awesome. Great.
Thanks.
Patrick, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. I apologize for being late.
That's okay. No problem at all. We'll jump over to you as soon as Mark is done. Go ahead, Mark.
Okay, so Pat kind of thought, most of our landfills in our area, almost all of them, have a waste to energy component to them, right? So, and it's generally gas to energy, and there's three common ways. So I talked about how we capture the gas through that, the well system, and at that point, then there's again three common ways that gas is treated to provide beneficial reuse, in this case, energy, right? The way that we're actually moving more towards recently is renewable natural gas. So we capture the gas, and then it goes to a facility that scrubs the gas, basically takes the impurities out, and then returns that gas into the natural gas grid. So that could be powering our trucks. So 21% of our fleet is CNG. So, it's created at a landfill, powers our trucks. It's a cleaner burning truck than obviously the fossil fuels. Another thing, it could be just natural gas in your home. So it could heat your home. It can cook your food, whatever it is. Again, so we're getting a lot of value, and we're finding, for at least our company, we're getting the most beneficial reuse through the renewable natural gas. So we've got existing electric plants that are being converted today, including, we'll talk about carbon limestone in Ohio. That's going through that process now. Less common is thermal energy, where it takes that gas on site. It basically is used, not too far away, but to run boilers that then again generally create steam, and then that steam is used as energy. And then the more common way historically has been producing electricity at plants, and we have a number of these today that on site usually there's these energy plants that the gas is used to power turbines that turn, create electricity, and then the electricity is put back into the grid. So again, great benefit to this, and Pat talked earlier about our commitment, to continue to drive up the use of our gas to energy while lowering our carbon footprint. One other way that's not on the slide that's interesting, we actually have 8 landfills today that use solar. So that, landfills can be a pretty big expansive area. And when we do that final cover area, we put up solar panels, and we actually have locations where that geomembrane that I talked about actually is a solar panel. So that itself generates electricity. And, we continue to look for viable alternatives to add solar to the mix as well. So I know we'll hopefully have some time for some Q&A at the end. I know I covered a lot of material, but I'm going to pass it back to Steve right now. He'll talk specifically about some of the regulations in Ohio and particularly about the capacity and the fact that the landfills there have decades of opportunity to continue to serve communities near and far.
Mark, before you go on, I would like to leave some time for Q&A at the end. So for your back timing purposes, I'd like to start the Q&A maybe about 10 of 5 of 11 there, and then we'll go from there. Okay.
I think that'll be fine. Thank you.
Hey, Steve,
Yes.
if you could you reintroduce yourself? I don't think Mark and I did a good enough job.
And I apologize for being late. For some reason, my computer would not let me in, but I was able to do it. My name is Steve White. I'm president of Stephen H. White and Associates. It's a solid waste consulting firm. A little bit about my history. I did work for the Ohio EPA for 8 years. My last position there, I was in charge of the solid waste program, the hazardous waste program, the infectious waste program, and the Superfund program. I left the Ohio EPA and worked for a hazardous waste firm for 4 years. Then I joined Browning Ferris Industries, BFI. I worked for BFI for 10 years. BFI was then acquired by Allied. I left the company and started my own company, but have been working with Allied and now Republic Services on regulatory and government affairs since that time. We know that some Connecticut waste is coming into Ohio. We thought it might be worthwhile to talk to you about what the environment is like in Ohio. Ohio passed its major solid waste law, House Bill 592 in 1988. And this law established a comprehensive planning and regulatory process to ensure that adequate and environmentally sound solid waste management capacity is available to manage the waste that Ohio generates. House Bill 592 directed the state to reduce the reliance upon landfills by increasing reuse, recycling, and waste reduction. House Bill 592 did note that solid waste facilities, including landfills, are critical components of the economic structure of the state, and when properly controlled and regulated, and that's important, make substantial contributions to the general welfare, health, and prosperity of the state and its citizens. House Bill 592 required the director of the Ohio EPA to work with a state advisory board to develop a state solid waste management plan and called for the creation of local, single or multi-county solid waste management districts. Ohio's 58 solid waste management districts are then charged with developing and implementing local solid waste management plans. The Ohio EPA, in conjunction with local health departments, regulates Ohio solid waste facilities under a fully federally authorized Subtitle D program. And by that, I mean that US EPA adopted a set of standards for all solid waste facilities under the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act. Ohio adopted similar standards that are consistent with and substantially equivalent to those of US EPA. And US EPA then authorized Ohio to operate that regulatory program in lieu of US EPA. Now, regarding landfill capacity in Ohio, if we go to the next slide, Patrick, thank you. Ohio is both an importer and an exporter of solid waste. In 2021, Ohio exported 1.2 million tons of solid waste and imported 6.7 million tons of solid waste. Ohio's exported solid waste was sent to facilities in states surrounding Ohio. The imported solid waste came primarily from 8 states and Canada. The primary sources of the out-of-state waste were New Jersey, about 2.6 million tons, Massachusetts, 1.2 million tons, Connecticut, about 917,000 tons, New York, 890,000 tons, and Pennsylvania, 635,000 tons. The volume of out-of-state waste has increased over the last 10 years from 4.3 million tons to 7.7 million tons per year. At the same time, the volume of available solid waste disposal capacity has increased in the last 10 years. The remaining life of the capacity has remained at 30 plus years over those 10 years. So while disposal has increased with the addition of additional capacity, our landfill capacity in the state has remained at 30 years. The volume of waste disposed in Ohio has increased from 20 million tons in 2011 to 23.5 million tons in 2021. And this does include C&D volumes that also goes into the solid waste landfills. Currently, Ohio has 38 municipal solid waste landfills. 8 are publicly owned and operated. 3 are publicly owned and privately operated, and 27 are privately owned and operated. Collectively, these landfills contain over 840 million cubic yards of permitted airspace, the remaining life of, as I said, over 30 years, and that's at current volumes. In addition, there's 1 landfill that is fully permitted but not constructed, 2 landfills that are currently seeking expansions, and 1 greenfield landfill that is seeking a permit. If those facilities are permitted and constructed, that would add an additional 230 million cubic yards of solid waste capacity, increasing the remaining life in Ohio to 42 years at current volumes. In 2021, these landfills disposed of over 20 million tons of MSW, construction demolition debris, and excluded waste. Excluded wastes are waste that are materials that are handled as waste, or they don't qualify as solid waste, such as fly ash, foundry sand, high volume, low toxicity waste. Now, on the issue of out-of-state waste, Ohio's solid waste law is silent on the issue of out-of-state waste, as federal law prohibits states from restricting the interstate movement of solid waste. And I would be happy to answer any questions now or at the end of the presentation.
Is that the end of the presentation?
No. Mark, did you have anything else to add before I went in to talk specifically about carbon limestone?
Let's just wrap up with a quick conversation on one particular landfill, and this is the one that takes the bulk of the waste from Connecticut. So once you go to that slide, Pat, and then we can drop the presentation and see our faces and do Q&A.
Okay, great. So as Steve said, we have 8 landfills in the state of Ohio, and the one I want to talk about here is Carbon Limestone Landfill. It's our flagship landfill in the state of Ohio. It's been there for a very, very long time, and it has accommodated a lot of waste that is generated out on the East Coast. The carbon has an estimated life of about 36.8 years, and it has options to extend further. We are currently working in phase 3 of a 5-phase landfill. So there's actually 2 additional phases. So that number can grow exponentially. So there's certainly plenty of airspace at this particular landfill for waste in the future. We just transferred to we converted to a new process for recovering gas. Previously, we would recover gas. As Mark had said, there's multiple ways you can manage gas within a landfill. But previously, this landfill recovered gas, and that gas was burnt to to run several turbines. We had 19 turbines on the landfill that actually generated electricity. That electricity was actually put out to the grid, and it was used by the local electric company. We found that there's a more sustainable way of managing gas. So recently, there was an investment made at the landfill where we're actually converting this gas into natural gas at the landfill, and then it's shipped out to a distribution yard. And we are right on the beginning of this process, and it should be starting here soon. But we estimate that the amount of gas that we are sending to the distribution center will be able to heat approximately 36,284. That's a very specific number. It was done with some type of a calculation, but we thought it was important to share that information with you. This facility is not located in a high index environmental justice zone. I am actually sitting 8 miles from the landfill. I've lived here my entire life. It is a very rural area, and the landfill is actually in Ohio, but the entrance to the landfill is actually in the state of Pennsylvania. So it's a bit unique with regards to where it is located, but it is not in an area that is anything more than a wilderness-like area. And again, I live 6 miles from there, and no one even knows that the landfill is there. We operate a state-of-the-art pretreatment plant that treats all the leachate that is created in the landfill prior to discharge to a local wastewater treatment plant. And one interesting thing we did as a company is a local community in which did not have the funding to upgrade or even build a new wastewater treatment plant. We worked with this local community, and through a private-public partnership with Republic, we were able to build a wastewater treatment plant that accommodates all the residents of this town, as well as it helps us with the treatment of some of the leachate that we generate within our landfill. We have a very strong relationship with our local community. Republic stands by the relationships with community. It's very important for us to be able to work with the neighbors, with the local municipality, the host municipalities. We have great working relationships with the folks that live in and around our landfill, as well as the municipality in which we sit. And finally, some of the revenue that we receive as a result of fees, we take that money and we fund the local solid waste district's curbside recycling program. So there again, there's a nice tie-in to what we can do for the community here, and that certainly helps us with our sustainability goals to allow us to help provide resources so that we can do more curbside recycling.
Yeah, Pat, I think maybe you mentioned that funding is specifically funded from out of state.
It is. That's correct. Out of state waste receipts that we get at that landfill for our fees is what directly funds that curbside program. I don't have anything else. Steve or Mark, did you have anything else you wanted to mention before we wrap up and open it up for Q&A?
Let's get into the Q&A, and if you could just drop the presentation and then
okay,
taking questions.
Thank you, Mark and Steve and Patrick. And if everyone will indulge me, I have a couple of questions before we open it up to everyone else in the room. And I know we're backing up to the 11 o'clock hour. Out of respect for everyone's time, I will keep them short and sweet. Based on what you said, and 917,000 tons of municipal solid waste that Connecticut sends you, what kind of a capacity size modern landfill would be necessary in the state of Connecticut? Assuming that we want to do something that, if we do it, is going to last longer than 5 years. I'm not coming back and doing this again, kind of thing. So knowing that, we are a small state, pretty much developed already. So siting is going to be a major issue, but I'm multiplying the questions here. I'll let you answer the first ones.
I mean, unfortunately, I don't have the total. I'm sure we could get the total amount of waste that Connecticut produces and try to determine, the approximate size of landfill. Generally they don't, a landfill generally doesn't serve a whole state, but do you know off the top of your head how many tons that is produced in the state of Connecticut?
Let's go with the 917,000 because the other municipal solid waste in the state right now is being handled by trash to energy plants and waste to energy plants that are still in operation. So we would be expanding our portfolio or look to expand our portfolio as far as how we handle municipal solid waste going forward. So yeah, just go with the 917,000.
If you just said 1 million tons a year, so we have lots of landfills that accept 1 million to 3 million tons a year, and even bigger than that. So it's really a pretty wide open question, and I say that because it depends on the geology, right? So the space of land depends on how deep you can go, what the geology is as far as how much land. But I mean, if we were looking at it, we would want to look at something that would have 25 years with some expansion possibilities. So I probably wouldn't. So if you said 25 million cubic yards, and so, which there's not exactly a tons a yard equation, that varies depending on what type of waste. So, I mean, I think you're probably going to need to get something with that capacity. And from a footprint, again, that would vary pretty wildly. But I mean, 1 million tons a year, you wouldn't need a huge footprint to do that. Again, but it just depends on the geology that you would have available.
Mark, if I could, I would add coincidentally, carbon limestone does take about 1 million tons a year.
Yeah.
And the other way to look at it is what the authorized maximum daily waste limit is, and that's based upon the size of the facility and available equipment. In a carbon limestone, our daily limit is 11,000 tons a day. And we're well under that on a daily average. We average about 4,100 tons a day. And that 4,100 tons a day does allow them to take about 1 million tons a year. So a landfill equivalent to the size of carbon limestone would be able to take care of that.
Yeah, well, not only that lifespan, but if you look at on assuming when carbon started to when it will eventually close through all those phases, could be 80 years. So it's a long-term solution if you did something the size of carbon.
Thank you. And, as I said before, citing something that large here in the state of Connecticut is going to be very challenging going forward. We have a lot of, look, if I mentioned doing this in my district, they would come with pitchforks and torches, and that would be the end of me. I'd be in the landfill. So does Republic assist the state and or your customers with potential siting, or do you leave it to the municipal and the state to do this, and then you come in at when needed?
Well, if we're looking to site a landfill, that would be our responsibility to find a location, deal with a location. In Ohio, landfills are subject to local zoning where there is zoning. So that would be our responsibility to get zoning approval. We would then prepare an application. We would submit that to the state, and the state would process the application. We can certainly work with municipalities on that process, but it's usually the applicant's responsibility to prepare the application, submit that to local officials and the state, and work it through that process.
Thank you, Steve. In the interest of time and not monopolizing, we're going to go to Jason and then followed by Frank.
Guys, question for, I don't know, Mark, Steve, or Pat, I guess. Where, I'm familiar with your Pine Avenue landfill in Niagara that has rail, the ability to accept by rail. What other facilities do you have that, and I'm not talking about those 12 high containers that you guys operate. I'm familiar with those, but where if anywhere, are you guys unloading gondolas? And do you have any future plans to do that at either Carbon or Brunswick?
Okay. I can take that question. So currently, we have 3 primary landfills that support the Northeast area. We have a landfill called Carlton Farms. It is in Michigan. We currently offload containers at that facility, and we ship material there generally from Massachusetts. We have another facility in South Carolina that is our Lee County landfill. That is containerized 12 highs, and it is mostly waste that is coming from New York City's Staten Island contract. The last and newest option is we have a partnership with a company called First Response. They have a facility located in Skippers, Virginia, and they have the ability to offload gondolas there. And they will offload the gonds, load them into a transfer trailer, and then that would be sent on to our Brunswick landfill that is actually located in Virginia. So those are 3 primary areas, or the 3 primary rail service locations that we have.
Yeah, that I would just say that there is a lot of interest in rail at the moment. We are exploring options at many of our, not all, but many sites, including, the potential at Carbon at some point.
I'm familiar with those First Response guys in that offloading site, but they can't unload MSW there from what I understand yet. Are they still got permit issues there?
It's not issues, it's a pending permit. And I think, look, I haven't spoken to them within like the last week, but I think their engineer had submitted all the information. They were just waiting for a response back from the local regulators. But I do believe they will be able to offload C&D, MSW, and special waste at that facility.
Right. The problem there is we need to truck it again, right? They unload it, then they have to truck it again. So you're not directly unloading at any landfill other than your 12 high containers. You're not unloading gondolas yourself anywhere.
We are. Well, we are actually, but it's out in the West Coast. We have a large gondola offloading facility at our East Carbon landfill located in Utah.
Mm-hmm.
We have it's a large operation. They have a circular track, and the gondolas come in. They're actually lifted off the track, fully rotated, offloaded, turned back around, put back on the rails, and then put back out into service. But that's in Utah, and that's not something that would be able to support the East Coast.
Now we are taking, say, containers, 12 high into, they come in double stacked, but they're just standard chip.
You're picking up a little more. Sorry.
No, I'm just saying at Carlton Farms, we do take standard size shipping containers, not just the 12 high. Yeah.
The 12 highs, you're not taking those from any outside customers like us. Those are from your own facilities, right?
I think.
Yes, and from New York City. New York City has their own. They have their own equipment, flat cars and containers. That's correct. Look,
is Pine Avenue still open in Niagara?
It is. Pine Avenue's open. We accept both containerized and gondolas there. We take a significant amount of C&D into that facility, but we do not accept municipal solid waste. 90% of what we offload there is in gondola form. Very little of it is in containers, and the life at that landfill is we probably have about 2 more years left. And it's interesting that you're asking this question, because we as a company are super focused on finding long-term solutions for both GONS, containers at multiple locations. So this is something that's on the drawing board. We just have to align the need with the capacity, and certainly we are a leader in waste by rail, within the industry, and we certainly want to stay at the forefront of that leadership.
Yeah, I think I appreciate that. It'd be nice to have some more options. The 12 high system where we are in central Connecticut here doesn't work because of the height. You guys have to be further out where you could double stack them things. We don't have the height clearance on the rail. Really anywhere in Connecticut. There's low bridges and height issues everywhere.
Yeah, that's why we've migrated over to the containers that Mark was talking about, the well cars. They seem to be they're a more diverse option. like for instance, out of Long Island, they can't double stack containers out of there, and getting 12 highs isn't very easy either because the Long Island Railroad has, limited service. There's an area in the country where they need a solution for rail, and everybody's trying to find a way to solve that problem. Some of the infrastructure, unfortunately, that we have to depend on is old, and we're doing everything we can to navigate around that to make sure that there's ample options for everybody who needs disposal service.
So where are you doing the wall cars? Those are the 40-foot export containers, is what you're saying you're using?
Yeah.
Where are you loading those? Are you doing that in Springfield?
I think there's a rail yard called, look, I'm not the
Yeah,
absolute.
no, I'm not trying to badger you here.
No,
We could
it's
talk offline.
absolutely. I would love to do that. I believe there's a little town called Ayer, A-Y.
Oh, you're doing, okay.
Yeah, I think they load them there, and those 40-foot containers are actually going to
Those are
Michigan.
going. Okay, because I thought everything there was going to Arrowhead and Alabama.
Yeah, okay.
I didn't realize there was two.
Things change quick. Things change very quickly.
I didn't realize there was two operators in air. Is that what you're saying? You're there and the other guys are there?
Yeah, I believe Arrowhead. Look, again, there's more than one loading point. I'm not the expert there.
Yeah.
I know that we were loading out of air, but there's other areas up there that, Mark, maybe you would be able to know exactly where those cars are being shipped from in Massachusetts over to Carleton.
Well, Devon's and Ayers, so it's those, I think we're getting them from both locations, but,
and Devon's is our transfer station that we own actually in Massachusetts. And I know they are shipping to Michigan for sure.
Yeah. But, we're trying to design a system so that it can go to Carleton Farms today. It can go to another place depending on, what's going on with the railroads. Cause that's the big, thing you're dependent upon once you build that system.
Right.
So.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right, I appreciate all that info. We'll talk offline a little bit too, a little later. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. Next, we're going to go to Frank Antonacci.
Well, thank you to the Republic Service team for joining here. I think, we've spent a lot of time thinking of alternative technologies and new potentially burgeoning systems, but I think this was helpful to bring everybody up to speed on what has been going on in landfills throughout the country, and especially in Ohio in the meantime. I think we learned in one of our other subcommittee meetings that maybe folks in Connecticut don't have a great grasp of what a modern day landfill is. So it was very helpful, I think, for you to go through that. I thought one thing was interesting, and maybe you could explain, you use waste to energy facility or waste to energy site as I think to describe one of your landfills. I think in Connecticut, we associate that as synonymous with an incineration facility. Can you explain that, kind of why you use that terminology? And then the other two-part question, how does capacity grow in the state while volumes continue to grow?
All right. Yeah, I think I can handle that. So, our landfills take waste, right? And the byproduct of that is gas, which is then turned into energy. So, they're waste to energy facilities. And you talked about incineration. It's another version of that. They take waste and they burn it and they create energy. So they're two different ways to get to the same end, which is to create a beneficial energy byproduct from that waste handling process. So, in our minds, it's not different. There's good solutions, and landfills are one of those good solutions. So as it relates to capacity, the one thing Steve touched on the fact that, first of all, when you have a landfill sited, you may have, like carbon limestone would be example, you have a lot of space. You don't go through the process initially to get permitted airspace for all the land you have. It may be in your master plan, but you go in and get that kind of as you need it. So we have 38 years of life at carbon limestone, but in reality, we probably have 70 and at current rates. So that's one way. The other way is, and it just talks about how we're getting so much better operators of landfills across the country and the equipment that we use, that we're getting better at packing the trash, or basically putting as much as we can into the same space today. We call that density at our landfill. And so that also, as we continue to get better, it's like just think of productivity improvement and something like that, right? We get better at productivity improvement. That, along with the fact that we can continue to, expand our footprint, is how those years don't change.
Well, thank you very much. And if any of us wanted to take a field trip, can we come see Carbon?
Yeah, Carbon would be a great spot for you guys, because it's got, all the things we talked about. It's got very elaborate gas system. It's got the RNG waste to energy plant. It's got a pre-treatment plant for our liquids, which is really, really cool to go through there and see how all the different bugs and stuff kind of work on treating the liquids. So we would love to have you guys. Just let us know. We'll make arrangements.
Thank you. I'm sure a vacation at a landfill is not high on many people's list here, but we appreciate the opportunity.
You'd be surprised how many people tour our sites. Just
Thank you, Frank. And, you're driving if we go, but it's got to be a compressed natural gas vehicle that we can refill. We can refill there and then come back.
yeah,
Let's throw you in one of our roll-offs or front loaders. That's fine.
Oh, so let me conclude with a question that, I will deny asking, but, one of the positions here and points that are being made in the state of Connecticut is that, because of the closing of our Mira plant, we have to send our municipal solid waste out to your landfill, the Carbon Limestone landfill. And the wrapping up of that statement is that you're going to close soon, so we have to do something now, kind of thing. And you're telling me that you're going to be open and way past me being 6 feet under myself. So that you have the capacity to keep taking what we create in Connecticut for the foreseeable future.
I think that's 100% accurate.
Okay, not that I'm advocating for this. I'm just trying to work in reverse so that we know what we're backing up against. And I still am looking forward to our state exploring the idea of diversion of municipal solid waste and our own single stream recycling, like what happens at Murphy Road here. But I was always under or I was told until I heard this today that we were T minus 4 years, and then that was it, and we would have to find somewhere else or have a solution for our municipal solid waste going forward. Not that I want to delay us making a decision, but it gives us a little bit of wiggle room going forward. And I'll be honest with you, locating even though a modern landfill in the state of Connecticut is and will be problematic for whatever municipality or location we, if ever, decide to go by. So before we wrap it up, Jen has a question, and then we will wrap it up. Jen.
I apologize. I know we're at the end of the hour. My question is regarding liability. That is typically the concern from municipalities. And you mentioned that you have this more modern geomembrane system. And is there any doubt or any concern that those geomembranes would deteriorate over time and create any concern of environmental impact, a negative environmental impact?
Yeah, Steve, do you want to chime in on that from a Ohio regulatory standpoint, since you guys kind of put the parameters in place to, along with the federal government on that?
You're on mute, Steve. You're on mute. Can't hear us. You're muted.
The reason I thought it might be good from Steve, because
There we go.
question from, from a state's perspective.
Sure. He's off mute now.
Can you hear me now? Yeah,
Yeah.
in Ohio, we have 30 years responsibility of post-closure care, and that's at least 30 years. And we have to establish financial assurance for those 30 years before we take the first drop of waste. We also have, should something happen, should there be some type of release, then you have a corrective actions program, how you're going to deal with that issue. And you have to establish financial assurance for that. And at the end of the 30 years, what we have to do, it's just not 30 years and you're done. At the end of the 30 years, we have to go to the Ohio EPA and say, here's the status of our landfill at this point in time. It's been closed for 30 years. We've been monitoring it for 30 years, monitoring the leachate, the glass, the gas, the cap stability. We go to the EPA with that information. The director of EPA can then make a decision. Okay, your landfill has reached a point of stability. It is not an issue. Or the director can decide to extend that post-closure care for as long as is necessary to make sure that the landfill is in a stable environmental situation. So certainly there's concern, but there's a system in place to monitor that, to make sure that the public is protected.
Thank you. And I have one very quick, another question. What is the average tip fee that you see for landfilling if it was coming from Connecticut to out of state to you?
Well, I mean, that's kind of, our, I don't know if, we are a public company, but, some of the stuff that we charge varies widely by customer. So I don't know if we want to give you a specific number, not answer your question, but.
A range?
Yeah.
No?
It just depends.
Okay.
It depends
Maybe
on how.
we can talk offline.
Yeah, there you go. That's fine.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative.
Thank you, Jen. Jen represents the Housatonic Regional Resource Recovery Group, and I'm sure she'd be very interested in having a conversation with you going forward on tipping fees. And then, I promise this is the last question. Your Connecticut customers, that maybe the state itself or some of the other haulers that take it out, our waste to Connecticut, would we or they be eligible for any of the benefits that you had they detailed, the compressed natural gas trucks, the money for recycling, or is that just something Ohio specific?
Well, I mean, the way it's set up today, like you talked about, that recycling program is is something we did with the local county, right, to come to an agreement. So, that benefit goes to them today. I think if you look at folks in Connecticut today, that's kind of where the value we kind of provide is kind of getting into what's the cost of disposal, and for us to take it from there, if you will. So.
Got it. Gentlemen, thank you for the education. We appreciate you taking the time. We have a heavy lift coming up with what we're going to end up doing with our municipal solid waste. But as Frank said, I had visions of a landfill out there like they used to see with open air dump trucks and the whole 9 yards. And I have to say that I should have known better, but now I do. So thank you again, everyone. And for our planning purposes, I would anticipate that this is most likely our last subcommittee meeting for this year. We were assigned to be on this in the off session, and since we've started our legislative session, I don't foresee us meeting again in the near future. And what I'll try to do is, if and when the time comes for our report to be issued to the Committee of Cognizance, we will send it around to have everybody have a peek at it. And before it gets out, maybe respond to some to some concerns and questions, but you know, with everybody on board, we can't have a give and take forever on this. So, but again, thanks for your commitment to giving us your expertise, and hopefully we can make some good decisions for our state concerning municipal solid waste going into the future. So again, everybody have a good day.